What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Art of Hunting podcast. And today we're going to do a solo episode for YouTube and podcast and just talk about some things that I have learned over the years. Today's subject is going to be why artists fail. So artists are not known for being successful very often at business. And by no means have I got it all figured out. We are learning stuff every day. And I feel like every week we deal with something that I didn't see coming or that we've never dealt with before. But overall, artists are not known for their success. And talented people fail all the time. Look at the NFL. Look at athletes. Talented athletes that have God-given ability and unbelievable speed and agility and power fail all the time. And then you have guys like your Tom Brady's that are backup quarterbacks and then get in a rhythm and get in a mode and a routine, and they go on to have great careers. And so it's fascinating to me as I watch athletes, like what kind of makeup makes up the person that's successful versus crashes and burns. And it's very rarely talent. That you got to have that, but it's very rarely talent. So we're going to talk today about a few things. I've got 5 reasons here why I feel like artists fail. And this is not a judgment on other artists. Most of these are ways that I have failed in the past and tried to learn from them. So all this stuff comes from hard knocks and experience. The number one reason I feel like artists struggle, and we're going to mainly say struggle in the business world, but they are too focused on their craft, okay? Artists, and myself included, I have this side to me where I just want to be left alone, leave me alone in my studio and let me draw turkeys and deer, and just leave me alone. And I think all artists have that. All people who are committed to their craft have that in them, where they want to lose themselves in the craft and in the moment. That is unbelievably important, okay, to produce good work. You've got to have a never-ending drive to increase your craft. Where I see a lot of artists, though, go wrong is they have this, if I build it, they will come. That if I just get good enough at my craft, eventually everyone's going to notice and I'm going to be paid and receive all of the things that I want in life. Now, it's important. One of my favorite Bible verses is, do you see a man, it's Proverbs, says, do you see a man who excels in his craft? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before unknown men. You have to be good. You have to be good. You have to have a talent. You have to have that gift and that ability, but then you have to take it and make the most of it. I see a lot of artists that they just want to continually dork out over their craft. And a lot of times when you're at shows and stuff, you'll talk to other artists and you can tell there's a certain shop talk that we all have about, what kind of canvas you use, where to get your frames, all that kind of stuff. But then some of them you can tell they just lose themselves in that details, the fine. What about the tooth of this canvas versus the tooth of this canvas, and what about this and what about that? And you can't get too focused on that craft. You can't forget your audience. Most people just want a great image, an image that inspires them, an image that they can hang in their home and be proud of. They want to see us doing our creative thing. A lot of them don't care what screws you use on the back of your frames to hang your hardware. Okay, that's not really a super important detail. And I see a lot of artists that just get so lost in that craft that they think if they just get better and better and better, they will get the accolades they deserve. And that's great, but the problem comes when they don't do the other things they need to be successful. They ignore paying taxes or marketing. They don't want to put the time into the other things that it takes to run a business because all they want to do is geek out on craft. And that's where they get lost. That can be successful if you have someone that steps in and does that. Sometimes a spouse runs all the business so the artist can do their thing. That works. That works really well. But if you're going to be as a successful art business, you have to have all the pieces in place that a real business does. You can't just lose yourself in continual research and development, which is what an artist would be, and doing the creative work. You have to get that work out there in front of people. So you got to do the marketing. You got to do the business side. You got to have your paperwork. You got to have your stuff, your ducks in a row there in order to be successful overall. So can't focus too much on the craft. Got to have that as a main focus, not the only focus though. The second thing is, and this is a big one, is a lack of real world experience, a lack of business experience, a lack of corporate experience. Most of your successful artists that I have seen, they did a stint in the corporate world, or they had another job, or they worked for an agency, or they were a freelancer for a long time. And what that does is it teaches you that you are part of a team. You're part of a bigger picture. You may be one of many people that it takes to bring a product to life or launch a new product or an ad campaign. But you're not the only person. And a lot of times I feel like artists, and myself included, think that everything revolves around the creative, that the creative is the only thing that matters and none of the other things matter, when the reality is everything matters. All of it matters. If you are going to launch a product, so I worked as a graphic designer for years, and if I was to help them launch a product, you would need to know who the target market was, what the purpose of the product is, what it does, what are its unique features, and then craft a message around how do we relate to customers. So you've got to have a logo that resonates. You got to have some branding that resonates, a package design, some print advertising, some photography for social media. You're producing all of that stuff. But at the same time, it takes engineers to produce the product. It takes salespeople to get it at retail. It takes distribution people. People got dudes in a warehouse shipping the stuff. And all of those things are important if you're going to have a successful product or business or anything like that. And what I learned, and it took me a few years, coming out of college, and in college, you're just kind of taught that everything revolves around you. And then you get some hard knocks when you come out and you start working in a corporate job to realize, hey man, you're one spoke in a wheel and all of the spokes matter. You're not the only spoke that matters. And you better get your job done so that other people can get their job done. And that sort of a hard reality I feel like is really important for an artist to understand, because not everybody who buys art just thinks about art all the time. Like, yes, it's our world day to day, and yes, it's our craft, and yes, it's everything. And it kind of goes back to focusing too much on craft. But, most of the people that buy my work, they don't think about art every day like I do. And artists tend to think that everyone thinks about art all day. And the only thing that they think about is creative ideas and this and that and the other. And you learn real quick, like you have to deliver, you have to produce, most importantly, you have to hit deadlines. And my experience with artists and even hiring other artists as freelancers is artists are freaking terrible hitting deadlines. I mean, terrible. And that's a hard thing when you are when you're a freelancer working for an agency, because again, in the grand scheme of launching the product of the business, there's a timetable that has to happen. And you better not be the one that wrecks the timetable for everybody, or you're not going to get hired again. And a lot of artists don't understand that they think that the company or the other business or their buyers, their whole life revolves around the creative process. And that ain't true. Your life revolves around the creative process. You got to get that creative process done and wrapped up by the deadline so that everybody else's life can do their thing. So the salespeople can do their thing. So the manufacturers can do their thing. And so I think that some real world experience is really good for an artist, especially a studio artist, because studio artists tend to hang out with other studio artists, or they work in academia. They're a professor, or, all they've ever known is academia, and they don't really understand the deadlines and the speed at which the corporate world works today. And I think that my own years as a designer and then working as a freelancer for bigger brands and bigger companies was really helpful to kind of whip me into shape. Because I definitely needed that coming out of college to realize, look, dude, this stuff doesn't revolve around you, and not everybody thinks about art every day, or creative stuff, or design, or photography, or textures, or illustrators, or line widths, and all the things that we talk about. That there's a bigger scope, and if you can use that to your advantage as an artist and find out where you play in that bigger scope, and then deliver repeatedly good results in that niche, I think that's where your success lies. But when you expect everyone to cater to your schedule, it doesn't work that way, and that's where artists have a hard time and struggle a lot. So get some real world experience. My best professors were ones that worked a day job and then taught a night class, without a doubt. The ones that had been academics for 20, 30 years, they just live in a fantasy world. They don't understand deadlines or customers or things like that. And I think real world experience is extremely valuable to an artist. Number 3, being inauthentic to themselves and what they know and what they love. This is a really hard thing for me to balance personally, because I have been fortunate enough to work in a field and an industry that I love. So I've always worked in the outdoor industry, whether that's for nonprofit conservation groups, or with ammo companies, or camo companies, or gun companies, bow companies, broadheads, you name it. I've been really fortunate that I was given the opportunities that I was given to work in the industry that I love. And so I don't really take that for granted, that my biggest passions in life, the things that I would do, even if I just was a checkout person at Walmart, I would go deer hunt and turkey hunt and do all the things that I want to do. So I have been able to work in a niche that I love. And I'm really fortunate there, and I really appreciate that opportunity. And as a designer, a lot of times you're going to get pulled. And if you're working for an agency or working for working as a freelancer, sometimes you're going to have to take on jobs for industries that you're not familiar with or really passionate about. The reality is, there's going to be times you have to do a job just to pay the bills. And you might have to take on a commission painting that just pays the bills. Or you just got to suck it up and do it. I think that when you are a studio artist, though, I think it's really important to work in a subject matter that you know, work in a subject matter that you like, and work in a subject matter that has an opportunity there for you. I see sometimes artists do things that are inauthentic, and every time I have done something that's inauthentic, I've regretted it. I've done it before for sure. Every time I've just painted something I just didn't want to paint, or work with a client that it just, in my gut, it just didn't feel right, and it just wasn't quite there. Every time I have done something like that, I've regretted it. Now, there's a difference sometimes when being uncomfortable versus being inauthentic. So, like, I'm not really comfortable on camera. I'm not really comfortable doing podcasts. I'm not really comfortable doing a lot of this stuff. A lot of the times I do these things on purpose to stretch myself and make myself do them and make myself grow. And live painting at trade shows like Seaweed, I'm not comfortable doing any of that stuff. So you have to push yourself outside your comfort zone. I think there's a difference between being uncomfortable and being inauthentic. So, for example, I'm not comfortable live painting in front of an audience. I've done it every year at CWE when they ask me to, because I want to push myself and I want to help get in front of new buyers and participate in the show that way. But I'm not comfortable with it. Whereas being inauthentic would be, I'm going to go paint in acrylic and I'm going to do a bluebird painting and I'm going to slot paint around and throw it everywhere and just make a scene just to get attention. That's me being inauthentic. And it really, for me, that really comes down to subject matter. Doing things, painting subjects that I don't like or I don't care about is really a recipe to go south fast. We've talked about here in the past, I've seen really talented artists try to get into wildlife just because I guess they see an opportunity there, or they think it's cool, or they want to try to grab some of that market. I'm not really sure what it is, but when it's inauthentic, you can always tell. And hunters are the people that buy my work and that buy wildlife art for the most part. They buy my kind of wildlife art. And hunters know better than anybody if it's inauthentic. And, we've talked before, I knew a really great, talented watercolor artist that I saw him he painted the deer family, which does not exist. Check out our Bambi video if you want to see that. But he painted the buck and the doe and the fawn is spotted, and they're in a green field meadow, and the buck has hard antlers, and you just start to go through it, and there's so much biologically inaccurate there, and you could tell that somebody asked him to paint that, or he thought it would be cool, but he had no idea what he was doing, and it wasn't authentic to what he knew, and it showed. And so I think that being authentic and finding a niche, a subject matter, a style that you really love and resonates with you is the best way to go for long-term career success. You might see a bump or a spike or get some attention for doing something that is inauthentic. I've done that too, and it never really pans out in the long term. So that's number 3. Number 4, this is one that I always got a kick out of. In college, you would always see just the artists that wanted to buck the trend and fight the man and resist capitalism and do this and provide a bunch of shocking art just to get a shock value, or art for social commentary. I feel like this resistance to capitalism, resistance to structure, resistance to everything. I've always thought it was kind of comical, because as a studio artist, who do you think's going to buy your work? It's going to be a capitalist, right? If you think that corporations are the devil, well, you need to learn a little bit, because I'm a corporation. We have an LLC. That's how my business is set up. And almost every flower shop and hardware store and small business in America, farms, they're all LLCs. They're all corporations. And you tend to hear some of the news of we're going to make corporations pay their fair share. Well, they're not necessarily talking about ExxonMobil or Walmart or, Verizon. They're talking about your local hardware store too. And a lot of artists, they don't really understand how that stuff works. And they have this just kind of chip on their shoulder about, I don't like capitalism. Well, who's going to buy your work? It's going to be somebody who started the business, who started the corporation, who made something of themselves. Another broke person isn't going to be able to buy your work. That's been a trend throughout history, is that people that have resources and have money, they're patrons of the arts. And we need those people. We need those capitalists that have gone out and really made something of themselves and contributed to the world and started corporations and technology and been successful in business that also like the arts, because those are the people that tend to pay us and buy our work and keep us in business so that we can produce more work. And there's sort of a resistance to wanting to make money, and there's a resistance to, I don't know if people just feel self-conscious about being greedy, but my stance is we've got to cover our bills, and I've got to keep the lights on here and keep food on the table, and we have to have a certain level of financial success so that I can create more work. It's hard to paint when you're hungry, and you got to balance that. Like, being financially successful or, having people that routinely buy your work, that is to support you to create more work. That's not just to line your pockets and swim in a pile of gold coins like on the cartoons. That is to produce more work, and success tends to fuel more success. So, this doesn't apply to everybody, but I have seen a lot of that in the art world, especially in college, where they think that anybody who makes $1 is evil. And it's like, man, that's how the world goes around, and that's who buys our work. So I would encourage artists to think about that a little bit before you get on a soapbox too much. Number 5, and this is a huge one, is not knowing your audience. And as a wildlife artist, my target market is hunters, and always has been and always will be. And we get, as even as we've produced more content, more YouTube content, more stuff, I get people that reach out and they want me to produce more content for artists, painting tutorials and tips and tricks and this and that and the other. And like, we'll do some of that. I'm not opposed to it, but I produce content for hunters because that's who buys my work. I've never had another artist buy my work that wasn't a deer hunter or a passionate outdoorsman. Other artists don't buy my work. So why am I going to produce a ton of content and a ton of resources and a ton of this and that and the other for other artists? Now, I know that there's artists out there that they'll do seminars. I'm actually signed up for one, Dustin Van Winchell. I signed up for his the other day, and I'm looking forward to that just because I like learning from him. And I think there's some amazing artists out there, and I want to learn from them, too. But so there's some artists out there that will produce courses and classes and content material to make a profit, and I'll gladly sign up for that stuff. But most of the content we produce is for hunters because that's what I am, and that's who I'm producing for. So that's our target market here. And a lot of artists, I feel like, don't even have a clue who that would be. Like they can't picture in their mind, who is my target audience? Who buys my work? Who is a fan of my work? And how can I reach that person? How can I communicate with that person? How can I create content that contributes to that person? And we produce a ton of content around here for hunters because, again, that's what I am. That's who I care about. That's who buys my work. And so we invest a lot of money and resources and time into producing free content for outdoorsmen and hunters because that's our target market. And I don't have a problem with producing a lot of stuff there because it's going to come back around to us because that's our wheelhouse. But I just know a lot of artists that it's kind of like anybody who buys my work is going to be my audience, and they don't really have a specific idea there. The other thing is your subject matter will be determined by that audience. So if my target market is hunters, chances are I'm probably going to paint things that are big game, that are species that we hunt. I'm not going to do a lot of songbirds, and that's just a personal choice of mine. But deer, turkey, elk, fish, stuff like that interests my target market, that's who we're going to work for. So again, this is by no means a soapbox for me of like why other artists fail. Everything on this list are things that I've failed on and continue to fail on, and try daily to just get better at it, to keep in the front of my mind, and sort of serve as a guiding light for what we're going to do, how we're going to set up what we've got here, how I'm going to pick and choose projects, where our business and my career is going. So those are just a few things that I've had to struggle through and fight through and learn by experience. And I hope you guys enjoy this. Stick around. We've got a lot more content coming, a lot of cool stuff going on here. We're going to film after this, doing some turkey shot placement videos, and then some content on why turkeys gobble. So one of the really fun things that I enjoy is using my art to help illustrate things in the outdoors, and that's what we're going to do today. So I appreciate you guys hanging with me for another solo episode. We've got some really cool guests coming this spring, and a lot of good stuff. So again, check out ryankirby.com for my work. I appreciate you being here, and best of luck this turkey season.